meeting of the Sauberry Town Council, and remind everybody that we are being broadcast live. Tonight's invocation will be given by our famous and wonderful Sergeant Mike Levin from the Sauberry Police Department, and the pledge will be led by Mayor and Council in audience and attendance.
Would you prepare yourself, Chair? Father God, what a privilege and an honor it is for us to seek you and to pray for a blessing over these elected officials, over those that are in the audience, over those that are within our town. We just are so blessed and thankful for this community, and we just pray that you would just continue to watch over us, watch over the decisions that we make, watch over our families, those that work here, and those businesses that want to come in, and we just are blessed. And so we just take this time to acknowledge that and ask for your guidance and direction in tonight's meeting. And it's in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Join me in the pledge, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Bracco.
Here.
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Hitt.
Here.
Councilmember Luss.
Here.
Councilmember Morales.
Here.
Vice Mayor Egbert.
Here.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thanks. Item number 5 is the approval of the agenda, and I hope everybody saw that we had an addendum added. I'll be adding that to the consent agenda if there's any objection, or without any objection. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved for this evening. Item number 6 is call to the public. At this time, any member of the public is invited to address the town council on any issue which is on tonight's consent agenda or any issue which the town council can lawfully act upon at a future meeting. Pursuant to Arizona open meeting laws, the council may not discuss the items, but individual members of the council may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the council, may ask staff to review the matter, or may ask the matter to be placed on a future agenda item. And I have one for this evening. Mr. Jennings.
Alan Jennings, Streetha resident. Laws are important. Our government is crafted and regulated by our laws. The mayor's statements for refusal to comply with Pima County's lawful regulations is disturbing, since refusal to follow the law undermines the foundation of government. Staff denies any responsibility or authorization to investigate this matter. Council has refused to act on this threat. I'm asking that in accord with Arizona open meeting laws provisions, that the council ask staff to review the matter or an option to have the matter be placed on a future meeting agenda. Well, thankfully, the bulk of the pandemic is attenuated. If the council refuses to accept the Arizona revised statutes, this will be a festering problem. Will they pass resolutions while refusing to accept others?
Thank you. That's all the speaker cards I have. Anybody else like to address the council? Seeing no movement, I will declare the call to the public closed and go on to current council and manager brief summary of current events. Mr. Udall.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You have to excuse my voice. I did come down with a cold a few days back, and I think I'm good now. It's just my voice is weird. But just a couple of things from me tonight. One is I do want to remind all of our residents and the council, of course, of our Red, White, and Boom event. This will be July 3rd. So Saturday, July 3rd, right. So mark your calendars for that. The event will start at 6 o'clock p.m. and will end at 9, and 9 will begin the fireworks.
No.
So
I think it's 8:30.
I'm sorry.
8:30.
8:30. Oh, right. Nanette was in the audience then. Okay. So 8:30 fireworks. So there'll be food trucks and music and a lot of fun. It's going to be our regular event out by the Lake Park, and I think it'll be a lot of fun for our residents and others.
Yep.
The second thing that I wanted to bring to the council's attention is that we will be replacing, it's kind of hard for you to see, well, even if you were close up, it's hard to see, because these old signs that are at our boundaries, that are sun faded and blurry and everything, are going to start to be replaced with a sign that looks like this. And that begins, I understand, this week. So just to let you know.
I can read that one.
Yeah, that was nice.
Thank you. Councilwoman Morales, do you need that? No. Simon? No. Bill? No. I just had a couple of things. Did you?
No, I didn't.
No.
Let's see, summer.
Also on July 4th, the American Legion Post 66 reached out, and they're going to be holding a flag folding ceremony in tribute to the flag at the Armed Forces Park that's in Rancho Cerrito with the Lady Titans. It's open to the public. I just wanted to thank them, and I know probably the Boy Scouts will be out, the troop, decorating our town, which I'm very grateful for. And then I think I keep forgetting, Randy's here from the chamber, the state of the town, hold the date. We're still working, nailing down the venues, September 24th. Correct, Randy?
Correct.
So put that down in your calendar. And as hopefully all of you know, this will be the last meeting into our meeting on August 23rd. So have a healthy and safe 4th and summer. And we'll see you all again soon. There's my I'm not going to know that. Item number 8 is the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Madam Clerk, item number 9.
International Boundary and Water Commission, IBWC report and discussion.
Thank you, and I'm going to have Councilmember Lusk, who can talk about his background on this commission, and he was kind enough, he said he was limited to 2 hours, so I'm very grateful for that, and Councilmember Lusk, if you proceed.
And that's on Eastern Standard Time.
Yes, exactly.
So make us all AC.
Now I'm going to do a little hum so these people can sleep. At the recent meeting of the International Boundary and Water Commission's Southeast Arizona Citizen Forum group, we had a very detailed discussion and explanation of the Central Arizona project and as it works and is managed here in Arizona. I know that that's not going to be of major impact. There will be some small impacts to Salbrita and Green Valley from the decisions that are made there. But water is an important topic, and a lot of people, when they see a headline in the paper saying that Lake Mead is drying up, they think that Arizona is going to be terribly impacted. And it's just an automatic feeling. Understanding the CAP is important so that you know what water is being talked about and where the cuts are being made and how it's being done. So I'd like to try and, in less than 45 minutes, to give you a brief discussion about that. The entire issue of water rights on the Colorado River began well before 1922. The matter being who gets what water out of the Colorado River. And so there were discussions that went on for some time. We had Hoover Dam come in the 30s, which began to make it possible to talk about distribution of amounts of water. And then 30 years later, we had another, the Glen Canyon Dam at Lake Powell, built as a second reservoir that feeds the Central Arizona project. The project we're talking about is in the lower basin. There are 2 basins that are managed. One's in Colorado and Wyoming. Ours is the lower basin. It consists of Arizona, California, and Nevada. In the early days, pre-World War II, there were a number of allocations made. These were agreements between the states as to how the water would be allocated from the Colorado River. An annual allocation of 7.5 million acre-feet was determined, and that would be made each year to the 3 states. So the total coming to the CAP, the 3 states, is 7.5 million acre feet. The interesting thing is that those allocations were made at a time when rain was plentiful. And so as we have progressed in time, those allocations have become more problematic all the time because of the dry weather that we're in now. 1944 saw an additional item come in, and that was a treaty with Mexico in terms of water rights for them, and that's 1.5 million acre feet per annum at the present time. That is 1.5 that comes out of the 7.5 million acre feet. So these are the allocations. In terms of the present time, we're talking now just about Arizona. We're not talking California or Nevada. We received 2.8 million acre feet of Colorado River water from Lake Mead, and comes out of there. Nevada gets 300,000 acre feet. California gets 4.4 million acre feet. And Mexico gets 1.5 million acre feet. That's the 7.5 million acre feet total that comes out of the river. Our share, 2.8. The emergence of CAP has been very slow over a long period of time. You go back into the 30s and the 40s, and really we were just really at a discussion point. But since that time, there's been a huge system placed on the land in terms of the distribution of this water. In fact, there are 336 miles of canals in the state of Arizona from Lake Havasu to Tucson that deliver the water to us, or to the situations. There are 14 pump stations that lift that water a total elevation of 3,000 feet as it crosses Arizona. And it flows 500 billion gallons of water every year from the river into the state of Arizona. 500 billion gallons. Now that supply supplies 80% of our state's population. So it is a major factor for central Arizona and western Arizona. And it also supplies 11 Indian nations as part of the agreement as well. The water usage in Arizona, the 2.8 million acre feet, is managed by the CAP in 4 tiers. This is how the 2.8 million acre feet is distributed. There's a 0 tier, and that is water that is committed to underground storage and water banking. That's water that comes out of the river and goes back into the ground, storage, whatever. That is 0 tier. Tier 1 is 350,000 acres of agriculture, water for agriculture, and that is one of the major purposes of CAP. Tier 2 is Indian lands and cities in general, municipalities. And then Tier 3 is, again, Indian nations, and then a category called municipal and industrial. And that's how they split that 2.8 million acre feet. And each of those has a certain amount of commitment in acre feet to those 4 tiers. The current level at Lake Mead is now 1,071 feet of elevation. That's the water stands at 1,071 feet. The usage is such that between 1,070 and 1,090 acre feet, there need to be cutbacks in terms of the water and its distribution. At the present time, Lake Mead is less than 38% full. And if you want to check that, just check the bathtub ring there, and you'll see that it's a marvelous white thing. I'm sure it's almost visible from space. Now, the second source of water is Lake Powell, which also supplies water in from its reservoir to Lake Mead. And that lake is now at 3575 feet in elevation, of course, because it's higher up. So that's where the water comes out of. Now, the required water reductions begin have started. There have been discussions that are going on. You're going to see it going into the media in a big way over the next few years. The expected lake level at Lake Mead in 2021 is 1071 feet. In 22, it's 1065. In 2023, it's 1045. So as you'll see, they're anticipating a fairly sizable reduction of water level and water in Lake Mead over a period of time. Now, of course, that can change simply by having a great rainy period of time of more than a few years. Now, because the allocations were set up in around World War II and before, there is a commission working at the present time so that in 2025, 2026, the Congress is going to be readjusting or reanalyzing those allocation levels. The 7.8 million, that will be negotiated down to its present amount, from its present amount to probably a lower amount because the lake is going to be at a lesser point. The other thing to keep in mind is that California was pretty good when they did the treaty back in some years ago. There are only, when water reductions are made because of that water level, Arizona gets cut, Nevada gets cut. Arizona at 4.4 million acre feet of usage is not cut. They have the full usage for agriculture. So Arizona and Nevada will suffer in some degree. And of course the Mexican water is by treaty, and so that is not going to change. So again, we'll be talking about a smaller number. It's important to understand that that water will be cut in the tiers. It's not just going to go out and somebody is going to stand in a dark office someplace and throw a dart and say, okay, it's time that we make a cut and let's round a figure. It doesn't work that way. The cuts begin at the 0 tier. In other words, the first cuts in the amount of water distributed will be from underground storage, from banking water, and so forth. The second cut, as necessary, will be at the agricultural level. The third level is the one that will be the very last level touched, and that basically is the municipalities, the remainder of the agriculture, and so on. So it's going to take us a while to get down. The cuts right now are being talked about 512 acre feet, 512,000 acre feet will be reduced in tiers 0 and 1. And as that amount rises, because the footage is dropping, there will be further reductions in 0 and 1, but 2 and 3 2 will be more lightly, and 3 will be pretty well protected. Overall, that'll be a 30% reduction in what comes to the state of Arizona from CAP. CAP water is largely for agriculture and water banking. It is also for municipalities. Question is, how will that affect Green Valley and Sahuarita as we see these much lower water levels and much less acre feet? In Green Valley and Sahuarita, how will it affect us? My assumption is that FICO will probably see cuts in their new allotments because those are agricultural and will be coming off the top. Community water out of Green Valley will probably be in the last tier cut because that is for municipality. So Green Valley acre feet coming in from the new lines that are coming through Sahuarita should be pretty good, except some cutbacks in FICO. There's also a binational committee currently working, and they have been working for some years, on a new desalinization plant in the Sea of Cortez near the border. And that will be kind of a first off for basically an understanding of the costs of construction, costs of operation, and what the dollar amounts would be for buying water at a future time. So basically that's the whole story. The important thing to keep in mind is that when you're reading all these dire predictions about water cuts, it's not our water. Our water is coming from aquifers in the ground. CAP is not giving us any drinking water per se. And again, we need to be aware of those cuts because they are serious for the state of Arizona. But again, they will impact the agricultural areas a little bit more heavily, except in California, which will be receiving the same amount as usual. But the future is being analyzed. They're looking at it. There will be decisions made in 2025 and 26 to alleviate the problem altogether. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Thank you. Well, I know as we talk about annexation east or new projects coming on board, having to acquire a 100-year assured water supply, I know those things will be a big focus, you know, for the development community on how we sustainability-wise continue. I know Councilman Davis had asked probably the, you know, end of this year, September, October, about maybe getting CAP down to do a resolution.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Loss' presentation there. But, you know, I think bringing it down to more the town of Sarita is what effect this will have on us. You know, we talk about FICO, they are a major water user in the area. If they've got to switch from, you know, CAP to, you know, more intensive drilling, you read all the stories. So I think it's just kind of get the facts. You know, that's what I said. There's a lot of stuff, and there'll be a lot of stuff in the press. I think it's good. It'll be good for the community to at least have an understanding where things are before we start seeing the glaring headlines that we're going to have to get buckets of water.
Yeah, it's terribly frustrating to argue about water when the argument is coming from the point of view of a factor that doesn't even involve us. Keep it to the facts of what our situation is, and we're going to have a situation, so let's talk about that, but not CAP per se.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Councilor Russ, thank you for your presentation.
Did you fall asleep?
I love you and teased you at the beginning of this, but I wanted to thank you for doing that. I have been on the council for more than a decade and have had CAP presentations and stuff like that, but I think that was the most clear presentation I've had as to where the water is going, where is it coming from, and everything, so I appreciate it. I was actually stopped by a neighbor yesterday with questions about what we were going to do when Sarita runs out of water. For this, and this was the fear-mongering and the misinformation, and so now after that I have a much clearer answer for her, so thank you.
No, thank the mayor. He allowed me to talk.
I was just happy it wasn't 45 minutes.
You're right. And it's probably to Kara's point, it's probably my, other than the road to Quail Creek, it's the most second asked question I get all the time is about water usage.
It's always from the ones that are already here.
Right, yeah. Thank you. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, item number 10.
Presentation of recent park improvements.
Thank you. And Ms. Michael, our Parks, Rec, and Community Services, I have to use saying that, Director, will present and lead this discussion. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We just want to take a few minutes this evening to highlight some park additions, some amenities, large and small, that we've added to the parks or we've updated in the parks in the last year, maybe 18 months or so. And so you're going to help me get this going. Here we are. And before we do start the video, I want to thank Mark Sebo. He helped in the communications department put this collage together of photos that highlight some of these park improvements. And, you know, we figure you've been to the parks and you've seen some, if not all of them, but maybe for the viewing public at home, we hope you will come out to our parks and after you see this montage, enjoy all these new additions. And I think the photos will speak for themselves, but I might add a little commentary as it just goes through. So thank you very much. Get this at the bottom. Oops. That was a quick presentation. There it goes.
That produced a lot of questions on
I know. The bridge. This is our newest pollinator garden. And a nature trail. It's very fitting that we would end with the park maintenance yard. Many of those projects were implemented with in-house labor from our park maintenance staff. Thank you.
Yeah, do you want to touch on too? I know we have the drive-in movie is continuing, if you wanted to touch on any of the upcoming events as well.
Sure, from a programming standpoint, we do have drive-in movies. We have a stack teen event coming up in July, on July 24th. And we have a Wizard and a movie at the end of July as well. So summer continues. We've got camps going. We've got open swim on the weekends, and it's just a nice, busy summer.
Great. And being that we won't have a meeting until August, any of those things that you could send out to the mayor and council, that'd be appreciated, because we share it on social media or try to attend, to show up. So, thank you. And what would you say, because I know the fields have been very, very important, and to, other parts of southern Arizona, they're not kept up, I would say, as well as ours are. How have you been finding that? The ability to keep up on our fields?
Well, it's been a challenging year because our fields experienced more usage over the past year. Outdoor recreation areas were what we would call loved to death. A lot of use when the city of Tucson closed their fields and Pima County closed their fields. A lot of folks came down here to use ours, and they really appreciated it, but they got a lot of use. And so that, coupled with some of our really extremely hot weather and the use, it's challenged us, but we're bringing them back, and they're returning to green, so we're really happy about that. And looking forward to keeping those available.
Thanks. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to quickly say thank you for thinking outside the box and thinking beyond what basic parks look like. I've heard lots of positive things about pickleball, about the ping pong there at Gulf Creek. I think I saw cornhole there. I've heard lots of fun things about the rope climbing thing at Animax, and just a lot of positive things of more than just what the standard park would look like. And the beautiful murals are spectacular, so nice job.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Where are we at with the ADA, or with the,
The new park.
being able to service, children with special
With
needs
all
and
needs.
things like that? Are we implementing
Inclusive,
new?
all-inclusive.
All-inclusive playground.
Okay, that one.
So that project is on the 5-year CIP plan. I believe it is programmed not for, this year to the 3rd year of that plan.
Okay, and just to refresh my memory, are we only doing it at one, or are we trying to implement something at all the parks or more than one?
That particular project is for a single site at Animax, to update that completely so it's fully accessible.
But, and I know AC's coming up next to talk about some of that programming within our budget, but that's the yearly conversation.
Right.
A 5-year budget
Yeah.
is a projection, but we get to give input on whether it's more or
Right.
sooner or whatever it might be, so.
If I remember correctly, when we discussed it, the council said that, all future building parks should be
Right.
all-inclusive parks. So that project you're talking about is Animax, but any future parks should have significant elements that provide parks for everybody.
And we're always looking for opportunities to ensure accessibility. The bridge project at the lake is a perfect example of that, to provide a universal, accessible route to our park, and that accomplished that.
Right. Mr. Mayor, if I should
Yes.
So I guess my point being, I do understand it's in the 5-year plan, and I appreciate that, as I'm sure most families do. However, when we're doing some of these upgrades, when we have a little extra money, if there is a way to somehow integrate into some of our current parks, some of those special, even if it's just a swing, I mean, how happy would some little boy or girl be that had special needs that was able to use it? But I know when we did talk about it and when we were planning for it, we were talking about all ages, from seniors all the way down to young children. But maybe if we can just, keep that in mind, because
Veterans came up, disabled
Yep.
veterans and
Right.
stuff.
So, anyway, thank you. Everything looks wonderful.
Thanks. Debbie?
Yes, I just wanted to give a shout out to Laura in Parks and Recreation. I did several laps around the lake, and when they were implementing the bridge, and she was out there almost every day with shovels on the tractor, just doing an awesome job. The bridge itself, I'm just so excited about that bridge, because I was one of those people always trying to walk through the rocks to cut my route a little bit shorter, and
So you get exercise?
yeah. So the bridge is awesome. Thank you guys for putting that in.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thanks. And have fun on July 3rd. I know a lot of us will be there. We are now entering our special meeting to adopt the final budget of fiscal year 2022. Madam Clerk?
Public hearing, discussion, and possible adoption of resolution number 2021-0671, adopting the fiscal year 2022 budget in the amount of $94,927,520.
Thank you, and Mr. Mariatti will be leading this discussion. And I think I've noticed each presentation, the slides have gotten less and less, so
Indeed.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so tonight you'll have an opportunity to adopt the final budget for fiscal year 2022. And this will be the third public meeting that we've had to specifically address the town budget. So it is going to be much more abbreviated, much to, I'm sure you're thankful for that. But if the public, if this is their first exposure to the budget, it might seem almost too abbreviated. But we have had our more thorough discussions and hours of dialogue or me presenting available out on our website as well as our YouTube page. So that has been available for public consumption since the early part of May when we had our budget study session. But hopefully as a reminder, you recall that state law requires the town to adopt a tentative budget before a final budget can be adopted. So 2 weeks ago, the town council did that very thing, adopted a tentative budget. We made that available to the public, both on our website as well as in the local newspaper. So the tentative budget established the budget ceiling for the upcoming year. So what you adopt tonight, it can be different than the tentative budget. We can reallocate things, we could lower the overall budget amount, but it can't be any higher than the ceiling that was already established 2 weeks ago. So with that, the tentative budget was adopted for a little bit less than $95 million. The budget is balanced in that all the money that the town will have in its coffers next fiscal year is accounted for to be spent for a particular function, project, program, department, or not to be spent to be saved for future years. So this particular budget is $35.3 million, or 59% higher than the current year budget. So if you consider the slide on the screen and consider the equation, financing sources are equivalent to financing uses. So the fact that the budget is going up by 59%, we have to have available funding sources to justify that level of increase. And indeed, there are more financing sources available. This slide gives you a breakdown of where those financing sources are coming from. In the lower right quadrant, you see beginning fund balances, which represents the savings from the current year that will roll forward next year, amount to $29.7 million and represents 31% of our overall funding. The lower left quadrant, debt proceeds, represents nearly a fourth of the budget and amounts to $23.2 million. And as a reminder, $16 million of that is providing capacity to do general obligation bonds in the Rancho Serena Community Facilities District. The top portion of this pie chart represents our revenues, and those amount to $41.9 million and makes up the remaining 45% of the total funding. A large revenue section are intergovernmental revenues. We receive state shared revenues and grants and whatnot throughout the year. $16.7 million, 18% of our funding. The highlight here, and something that's new, is the ARPA funding. So the American Rescue Plan Act funding is programmed in our budget for $3.75 million. We've already filled out the necessary paperwork and had our application approved by the state, so we should receive our allotment early July. So the next largest component are taxes, $14.8 million, and only makes up 16% of our total funding sources. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, typically with government, you'd expect that to be larger, but for us, it's only 16%. Now, the highlight here is that the budget assumes there will be no sales tax increases or any changes in our sales taxes, or any of our taxes, and no tax structural changes. So pretty much the status quo carrying forward. Looking at the funding uses, the top portion of this pie chart would be our spending plan, and that includes operations, capital, and debt service. So the spending amounts to $52.8 million. This is nearly $16 million, or 43% higher than the current fiscal year. And the reason for that is the majority of it lies in the capital plan. Current fiscal year, we were very conservative when we put together the budget in response to the COVID pandemic. So next year, we're ramping up the capital plan in earnest again, and so we're seeing a fairly substantial increase there. If we take a look at operations, $28.3 million for that. That provides funding for 166.9 full-time equivalent employees. That is the largest component of our operational costs and represents about 60% of operations for the people. The capital plan is $17.2 million, 18% of our total uses. That will pay for 24 capital projects. It includes about $8.5 million of infrastructure acquisition for the Rancho Cerrito Community Facilities District, and that's tied to that potential general obligation bond offering next year. And also 1.8 full-time equivalent employees that will be dedicating time towards our capital projects. Debt service amounts to $7.3 million, and that pays for principal, interest, debt issuance costs on existing debt, as well as any issuances that we have next fiscal year. So the lower portion of this slide represents the amount of money that we don't plan on spending, and that's a whopping 44%, amounting to $42.1 million. That would be our ending balances. Okay, this slide shows you how our operational costs break out across our 15 departments. Operational costs compared to the current fiscal year are going up $1.8 million, almost 7%, so it's increasing by 6.9%. Most of that is tied to our staffing increases that were included in the tentative budget. So next fiscal year, we're looking at an additional 11.3 full-time equivalent employees accounting for that increase. The takeaway here is that those departments that have the largest budgets, so those on the left side of the screen, are the ones that provide services directly to our business and residents. The standout here, obviously, is the police department with a budget of a little more than $9 million. And the reason why it has such a large budget is because public safety is a huge priority in our strategic plan, and it ties directly to our community well-being focus area. It's also our only department that's staffed 24 hours a day. So another way to look at the budget in summary format is we're going to enter the year with $29.7 million, representing our beginning balances. During the year, we expect to collect $41.9 million in revenues. As I mentioned earlier, the budget accommodates new debt issuances that will bring in about $23.2 million of additional resources, giving us total resources of $94.9 million, and that is the budget figure. Our spending plan is $52.8 million, and that leaves us with ending balances of $42.1 million. So the difference between beginning and ending balances is an increase of $12.4 million. The reason for that increase is we'll have about $9.9 million of unspent debt proceeds that will carry forward to the future to acquire infrastructure in future years. So not all the debt proceeds will be spent next fiscal year. $1.7 million is coming from unused ARPA funding, and in the budget, We are planning on using that for sewer infrastructure, which is an allowable use of the ARPA funding. And then $1.2 million comes from our wastewater enterprise fund. And as I mentioned in the previous presentations, that this will be the first year since 2007 that the wastewater enterprise fund is going to be in the black. So $1.2 million coming from the wastewater enterprise fund, mainly tied to all the development that we're seeing. So there's a lot of groundwork being done, but eventually that will result in homes, which will result in wastewater connections, and the connections will eventually result in future customers that pay the monthly user charges. Okay. So as you well know, we put together the annual budget within a 5-year framework because we want to make sure that whatever we commit to in the budget year is affordable and sustainable for at least the next 5 years. This helps us to avoid irrational decisions and playing budget games. So the net results of that 5-year plan are reflected here. There's obviously a lot more work entailed. But if you pay attention to the dark green section on the bottom of those bar charts, that represents restricted funds. And when I say restricted, that means the money that we have available is restricted from either debt covenants, grants, and or federal or state law, or even local laws. You see in 2022 it's $15 million, and then by 2026 it's down to $262,000. The higher amounts in the early years really represents the unspent debt proceeds that will be spent on future infrastructure, and is restricted for that purpose. So our restricted funds are established at our required levels and set aside appropriately. The next medium green section you see is $5 million each and every year of the 5-year plan, and that's by our town code and town policy. Our reserves are established at $5 million a year, and those are fully funded over this time frame. And then what we have remaining is available, so it's not restricted, it's not reserved, it's available for council discretion, our policies, and whatnot. So at the end of fiscal year 2022, we expect to have about $22 million of available funding. By 2026, given the 2022 spending plan projected out over the 5 years, that will grow to $33.4 million. There's some capital items in there that make things fluctuate in any particular year, but if we just look at the operational side of things, on average, we'll have annual surpluses of about $2 million a year beginning in 2023. So the takeaway on this is that the 2022 budget is affordable and sustainable. Okay, so with that, this is a public hearing, so the council will need to hold that hearing before it can adopt the final budget for the year. Council has an opportunity to make reductions or reallocations within the budget that's been presented, and then there is a resolution before you that includes the official budget forms that are prescribed by the Auditor General's office. So it's not the big budget book. That is actually the budget that you have attached to the resolution, 10 pages or so. So if you adopt the resolution, it will adopt those forms. The resolution also establishes a commitment for reserves of $5 million, which is set aside within the general fund. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And before I open the public hearing, does anybody have any questions? If not, I'll open the public hearing. I don't have any speaker cards. Anybody like to address the council about the tentative budget, the final budget? Seeing no movement, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Move to adopt resolution number 2021-0671.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great job, thank you. Next, we have item number 12. Well, that will conclude our special meeting. We'll resume our regular meeting. Madam Clerk?
Executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431-03A1 to discuss and consider the retirement, employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, demotion, dismissal, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of L. Kelly Udall, the town manager, pursuant to ARS 38-431-03A3 for legal advice pertaining to the same, and pursuant to ARS 38-431-03A4 for discussion and consultation with the town's attorneys in order to consider its position and instruct its attorneys regarding the town's position regarding contracts related to the same.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to enter executive session at this time.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll take a quick break, and I'll have the town clerk, town attorney, and Mr. Udall join us upstairs. I'll entertain a motion to resume our regular session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Back in regular session. Madam Clerk, item number 13.
Discussion and possible action regarding the retirement, employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, demotion, dismissal, salary, disciplining, or resignation of Al Kelly Udall, the town manager.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move that we accept Mr. Udall's retirement and sign the separation agreement that has been signed by Mr. Udall.
Second.
Any further discussion? Yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, we'll vote first.
But no, this is discussion, please.
Okay, I just wanted to briefly share some thoughts. Kelly, a couple of us were there when we hired Kelly, a little over 8 years ago, or about 8 years ago. When he was interviewing, I could see that he had vision and direction of what the town of Sarita could become. He saw where we were, and he had the vision as to where we could go. And I've seen in the last 8 years that that vision be largely successful. And many things, if you look at that last 8 years of what the town of Sarita was then and is now, has largely to do with Kelly's leadership and his ability to see what needs to be done. And we are grateful for his time here and his service to the town of Sarita.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Happy retirement. Madam Clerk, item number 14.
Discussion and possible action to appoint an interim town manager.
I was going to make a motion on that. Probably the closest folks are the vice mayor and the mayor working with the town manager and staff in general. So at this time, I'd make a motion to have A.C. Mariotti be the interim town manager.
Second.
Any other discussion?
I agree with the decision. I think there's lots, I should say, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry.
You can go right ahead.
Talking away. I agree with the decision, that the motion to have AC. I think he's been here longer than I have, and has been hugely successful in his department. His departments that he and the staff that he has are dynamite, and has done a great job there and continuing to keep us financially secure. And have seen a lot of leadership abilities that he has. I know that when I was looking at what we were going to do, I had a couple other people in mind that could fill the position, but based on other responsibilities and such, probably thought that AC is the better location, the best person for this at this point. So I'm in total support.
Mr. Mayor,
Gil first.
before I vote, AC, would you smile? Okay, I'm ready to vote.
Okay. That's the good enough feedback.
I'm just a little concerned that he might have 25-page PowerPoint for the brief summary of current events. My only concern.
I think he's listening.
So count the numbers in.
Councilmember Davis.
Mr. Mayor, just, obviously, interim revisions, we put a timeline on the motion.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. One of the thoughts I had on it was that, we could go, because the summer, these are tough hiring, I think, just in general, and when things are going on. So I was thinking, not necessarily with a time span, but maybe in about 3 months, get the council back together and have a discussion, and that way we'll give AC an opportunity to give us some feedback, but kind of leave it open-ended until he sees us, we see him. But giving him the ability to, enact some things as we move forward. That was kind of where I was
Do we
thinking.
know legally, is that okay if we don't put a date on it?
Do we want to increase that? Because AC can always call us in and say, I'm done.
Right. Well, that's why I didn't
Well, if we're
want to.
not here, it can't.
And that was for just a discussion at the time. And then we could, after the summertime, and again, we didn't have a meeting until the end of August, to kind of get a sense. What I would suspect is whoever the interim town manager is would probably reach out to all of us and kind of get our thoughts on where we are and where we'd like to go. And then, so I was just going to kind of leave it open-ended until we see how things transpire, but it's the will of the council.
Yeah, no,
I'm in favor of that.
I can leave it open.
Yeah. But I would like to discuss, he will be taking on additional responsibilities in his current role, and the stipend for him. Is there any history within the town of what that occurs? I know we've had other interim department heads. Anybody?
I would agree with that. Do we have to ask the finance guy?
Like this, it's actually, probably just sort of the will of the council, what we'd like to do. Mr. Town Attorney, does that have to be decided right now, or?
We need to do some research.
It does not. You could call a special meeting, you
Could we do it later and then retroactive it, like if we said X amount as of the interim?
I can't think sitting here on the spot of a reason you can't do that. But I.
To make it retro, so if we don't decide tonight?
Correct.
Yeah, I would like to find out what's been done in the past and with other department managers when they've gone intern, to see if their percentage or whatnot.
We can get HR to do some research as well.
Right.
And Mr. Mayor, he might, as an astute financial genius,
I bet he'll find the money.
want to negotiate.
Any other comments? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Murray. Would you like to say
Would you like to
anything?
agree?
Or?
I'm humbled by your appointment. Thank you for trusting me with that.
Thanks. We look forward to working with you.
Did he even expect? He did say.
Yeah.
I think that was a yes.
There wasn't a question.
Having no more further business, we're adjourned.